Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we'll be in Matthew, chapter 17, verses 10 through 27. The disciples asked him, "Why then do the experts in the law say that Elijah must come first?" He answered, "Elijah does indeed come first and will restore all things. And I tell you that Elijah has already come, yet they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wanted. In the same way, the Son of Man will suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them about John the Baptist. When they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, because he has seizures and suffers terribly, for he often falls into the fire and into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they were not able to heal him." Jesus answered, "You unbelieving and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I endure you? Bring him here to me." Then Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed from that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why couldn't we cast it out?" He told them, "It was because of your little faith. I tell you the truth. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, and you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Then, when they gathered together in Galilee, Jesus told them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised." And they became greatly distressed. After they arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and said, "Your teacher pays the double drachma tax, doesn't he?" He said, "Yes." When Peter came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first. "What do you think, Simon? From whom do earthly kings collect tolls or taxes? From their sons or from foreigners?" After he said, "From foreigners," Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free. But so that we don't offend them, go to the lake and throw out a hook. Take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take that and give it to them for me and you." So, the disciples asked about Elijah coming first. Jesus said Elijah does come first, and John the Baptist. Then there was a demoniac who the disciples couldn't cure, but Jesus did. Jesus prophesies his death again and resurrection. And then there's temple tribute money exacted from Peter and Jesus here. I guess 17:27 stands out to me somewhat. "But so that we don't offend them, go to the lake and throw out a hook, and take that and give it to them for me and you." So elsewhere, like, Jesus isn't concerned with offending people, and that calls them a brood of, like, for the Pharisees in particular, a brood of vipers and whitewashed gravestones type thing. So I guess to me that's saying that it's important to be picky about our battles. So, yeah, Jesus also recognized the importance of avoiding needless controversy, and so was willing to pay the tax so as to not offend those who questioned. The use of the Greek word scandalazine leads Barclay to write, "Therefore Jesus is saying, we must pay so as not to set a bad example to others. We must not only do our duty, we must go beyond duty in order that we may show others what they ought to do. The disciples had heard that Elijah must come first. According to the promise of Malachi 4:5, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." I say to you that Elijah has come already. Yet there was also a sense in which Jesus could rightly say, Elijah has come already. Elijah had arrived in the work of John the Baptist, who ministered in Elijah's spirit and power. This is evident from a comparison of the life and work of both Elijah and John the Baptist. Elijah was noted as being full of zeal for God, so was John the Baptist. Elijah boldly rebuked sin in high places, so did John the Baptist. Elijah called sinners and compromisers to a decision of repentance, so did John the Baptist. Elijah attracted multitudes in his ministry, so did John the Baptist. Elijah attracted the attention and fury of a king and his wife, so did John the Baptist. Elijah was an austere man, so was John the Baptist. Elijah fled to the wilderness. John the Baptist lived there. Elijah lived in a corrupt time and was used to restore a failing spiritual life, so was it true of John the Baptist. Have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic. This particular boy is epileptic. Oh my, I can't speak this morning. Epileptic symptoms were demonic in origin. Though this certainly could not be said about every case of epileptic symptoms, either then or today, the narrative in Mark 9:14-29 tells us that the boy was made deaf and dumb by this demon. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Sometimes Jesus' followers fail, but Jesus never does. The man was wise for going straight to Jesus when his followers failed. On previous occasions, the disciples did cast out demons, yet here they could not cure him. This is because there are ranks of demonic powers, and evidently some demons are stronger, more stubborn and resistant than others. Since the disciples had been given the authority to cast out demons before, apparently this demon was more difficult than most. O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? There's a sense that Jesus is frustrated with his disciples. His season of ministry before the cross was coming to an end, and perhaps he felt frustration that the disciples did not have more faith. Jesus laid the inability of the disciples to cast out the demon at their unbelief. To be successful in the battle against demons, there must be trust in the Lord God, who has complete authority over the demons. Yeah, there was no point in blaming the boy or his father, or the demon, though the demon was strong and had been there long. The fault lay in the disciples. When the ministers of the gospel find their endeavors, with respect to some places or persons, ineffectual, they should come by private prayer to Christ, humble themselves before him, and beg to be informed whether some evil in themselves have not been the cause of the unfruitfulness of their labors. Little faith can accomplish great things, but great faith can accomplish even greater things. What matters most is what our faith is in, the object of our faith. The eye cannot see itself. Did you ever see your own eye? In a mirror you may have done so, but that was only a reflection of it, and you may, in like manner, see the evidence of your faith, but you cannot look at the faith itself. Faith looks away to itself, to the object of faith, even to Christ. You will say to this mountain, move from here to there. Jesus here, in effect, calls faith an uprooter of mountains, a phrase current in the Jewish schools for a rabbi distinguished by legal lore or personal experience. Prayer and fasting demonstrates an occupation with and dependence on Jesus. He that would overcome the devil in certain instances must first overcome heaven by prayer and conquer himself by self-denial. Carrying on here, Psalm chapter 22, verses 1 through 18. My God, why have you abandoned me? I groan in prayer, but help seems far away. My God, I cry out during the day, but you do not answer, and during the night my prayers do not let up. You are holy, you sit as king, receiving the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted in you, and you rescued them. To you they cried out, and they were saved. In you they trusted, and they were not disappointed. But I am a worm and not a man. People insult me and despise me. All who see me taunt me. They mock me and shake their heads. They say, commit yourself to the Lord. Let the Lord rescue him. Let the Lord deliver him, for he delights in him. Yes, you are the one who brought me out from the womb and made me feel secure on my mother's breasts. I have been dependent on you since birth. From the time I came out of my mother's womb, you have been my God. Do not remain far away from me, for trouble is near. I have no one to help me. Many bulls surround me. Powerful bulls of Bashan hem me in. They open their mouths to devour me like a roaring lion that rips its prey. My strength drains away like water. All my bones are dislocated. My heart is like wax. It melts away inside. The roof of my mouth is as dry as a piece of pottery. My tongue sticks to my gums. You set me in the dust of death. Yes, wild dogs surround me. A gang of evil men crowd around me. Like a lion, they pin my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. My enemies are gloating over me in triumph. They are dividing up my clothes among themselves. They are rolling dice for my garments. Yeah, so this is the psalm that Jesus quotes on the cross there when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Again, I think I've brought this up before, but I don't like the NET's translation here. In 22:16, they have the bit where they say, like a lion, they pin my hands and feet. They don't get to have it both ways here, because they pierced is a word here that was, they changed the vowel pointers, I guess, in the Masoretic text to just say a lion there rather than pierced. And so if it's as the NET says, it would be like a lion, my hands and my feet. But rather, previously it would have said, they pierced my hands and my feet. So. But yeah, it's crazy how this psalm, written by David hundreds of years prior, is being acted out on the cross there, of men surrounding him, saying to Jesus, commit yourself to the Lord, let the Lord rescue him, which is what they said. They pierced his hands and his feet. They even divided up his clothes amongst themselves by rolling dice for his garments. Yeah. So, Pretty crazy. Yeah, 22:6, I am a worm, not a man. People insult me and despise me. Yeah, as he was being led to the cross, he was being shamed by virtually everyone. Jesus not only endured the withdrawal of the Father's fellowship, but also the actual outpouring of the Father's wrath upon him as a substitute for sinful humanity. This was the blackness and darkness of his horror. Then it was that he penetrated the depths of the caverns of suffering. It was necessary that he should feel the loss of his Father's smile, for the condemned in hell must have tasted of that bitterness, and therefore the Father closed the eye of his love, putting the hand of justice before the smile of his face, and left his Son to cry, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Horrible as this was, it fulfilled God's good and loving plan of redemption. Therefore Isaiah could say, "Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him." At the same time, we cannot say that the separation between the Father and the Son at the cross was complete. Paul made this clear in 2 Corinthians 5:19. God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself. Why have you forsaken me? There's a definite question in these words of David, and as Jesus appropriated them to himself on the cross, what Jesus endured on the cross was so complex, so dark, and so mysterious that it was, at the moment, beyond emotional comprehension. We can imagine the answer to Jesus' question, why? Because, my son, you have chosen to stand in the place of guilty sinners. You who have never known sin have made the infinite sacrifice to become sin and receive my just wrath upon sin and sinners. You do this because of your great love and because of my great love. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. This statement reveals the frequent ignorance and cruelty of those who oppose God and his people. It claimed to see no deliverance when it would indeed come soon. It also questioned the delight of God in the forsaken one, when God did and does truly delight in that one. Many bulls have surrounded me. The priests, elders, scribes, Pharisees, rulers, and captains bellowed round the cross like wild cattle, fed in the fat and solitary pastures of Bashan. Full of strength and fury, they stamped and foamed around the innocent one and longed to gore him to death with their cruelties. My bones are out of joint. This described the physical extremity of David at the time, but it also is an amazingly specific prophecy of the future suffering of the Son of David on the cross. The deliberately awkward and strained position of the crucified man meant that on the cross Jesus could say, "My bones are out of joint." There's also some reason to believe that on the cross Jesus suffered from a ruptured heart, making the words, "My heart is like wax, it has melted within me," also amazingly specific. Yeah, from Guzik here on "They pierced my hands and my feet." The Masoretic Hebrew text of Psalm 22:16 doesn't say pierced, it says as a lion. Yet the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament long before the Christian era, renders the Hebrew text as saying pierced, while the Masoretic text shouldn't be casually disregarded. There is good reason to side with the Septuagint on almost every other translation here. It may even suggest that the Masoretic text was deliberately pointed in the way it was by later Jewish scholars to avoid what otherwise would be a nearly inescapable prophecy of Jesus' crucifixion. Carrying on, Proverbs chapter 5, verses 7 through 14. So now, children, listen to me. Do not turn aside from the words I speak. Keep yourself far from her, and do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your vigor to others, and your years to a cruel person, lest strangers devour your strength, and your labor benefit another man's house. And at the end of your life you will groan when your flesh and your body are wasted away. And you will say, how I hated discipline, my heart spurned reproof, for I did not obey my teachers, and I did not heed my instructors. I almost came to complete ruin in the midst of the whole congregation. Yeah. You have the previous admonishment there to avoid the house of the adulterous woman. And there's further prophecy concerning what will happen if you do. Strangers will devour your strength, and your labor will benefit another man's house. And at the end of the life, your flesh and body will be wasted away and be filled with regret. People who commit sexual sins think their problems are solved. She understands me so much better than my wife does, and that life will get better and better. But disobedience to God's laws always brings sad consequences, and sinners eventually pay dearly for their brief moments of pleasure. Adultery and sexual immorality ruin lives. God's command that our sexual relationships remain only in the covenant of marriage was not given to take away from our life and enjoyment, but to add to it. When your flesh and body are consumed, sexual immorality leads to disease and breakdown of health. Even the stress of living a double deceptive life is enough to take away one's health. Consumed by those manifold diseases which filthy and inordinate lusts bring upon the body, of which physicians give a very large and sad catalogue, and the bodies of many adulterers give full proof. How I've hated instruction. One great price of sexual immorality is regret. When we see how empty the promises of sin are, and how great the price for those sins is, deep sorrow and regret is the logical response. Many men and women fallen into the snare of sexual immorality have wondered, how did I ever end up here? How could I be so foolish? How could I give up so much for what amounted to so little? Yeah. In the midst of the assembly and congregation, what the adulterer thought would remain secret was exposed. He entered his sin thinking no one will ever find out. When it was exposed in the midst of the assembly, his foolishness, betrayal, and lack of self-control were all public. Yeah. Anywho, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.